It's a big game tomorrow. Arsenal versus Manchester City at the Etihad Stadium. I would say everyone's two title, two favorites to win the Premier League going up against each other, and it's going to be a big test for Arsenal. Arsenal, of course, with a lot of key players missing. Whilst with Manchester City, I think there have been rumours and reports of De Bruyne being out, but I do think De Bruyne will play. But of course, Arsenal very weak going into this game. Let's get into it now. Arsenal, let's be honest, we haven't had the best start of the season. In terms of results, he hasn't been that bad. Of course, we have to look at the Brighton game, but in terms of performance, we have been, I wouldn't say we've been the best. I think we've been definitely better from last season's start, but in terms of performances, we have been very, I don't know the word you'd call it, maybe just a lack of creativity. Now, of course, I don't know if it's, of course, one of the main reasons is because of the absence of Martin Odegaard recently. But just in terms of general, even with Martin Odegaard in the team, with Brighton, for example, we didn't play too well. I think Wolves, we played decent, but Brighton, even with Odegaard, we just haven't been playing well. And I think that was carried on. You saw that in the Champions League, of course. We haven't been playing too well. And, the reason, a lot of people are saying that the reason why we didn't play too well in the Champions League was because a lot of maybe it's because Arsenal had an eye on this game against Manchester City. For me, I think it's complete nonsense. Like, I think you should focus on the game at hand. Whichever game you're playing next is the most important game. Forget about the next game. Focus on the game you are playing now. And Arsenal, like I said, we haven't been playing the best. And unfortunately, we are going up against the best team in England, which is Manchester City. For me, I'm going to conclude it all in one word. Make sure you don't lose. That is the number one thing. Arsenal must not lose this game. That's the number one thing. So if you're waiting to hear my predictions or what I think is going to happen at the game, you can click on the video you can exit the video right now, because that is what I'm going to say. That the whole video is Arsenal must not lose this game. That is the number one thing. I'm not expecting us to go and win against Manchester City, because when you look at our team, with injuries in key positions like Martin Odegaard out, Mikel Merino potentially as well, who I believe would have started this game, Arsenal, it would be a very difficult game it's a very difficult challenge to beat Manchester City at the Etihad. I don't remember the last big game they lost at the Etihad Stadium. I mean, of course, they lost against Real Madrid, but in penalties, I don't know. In terms of 90 minutes, I don't remember the last time they lost against a big team at home. So Manchester City, everyone knows about Manchester City. They're a very good team, and I think this year they have just started on fire. But the number one thing that Arsenal must not do is concede first. That is the number one thing, because yes, defensively we've been very good, but one thing is offensively we've been very bad. And for me, my main concern is if we concede first. Manchester City are very good defensively, and you come up against Arsenal, who are not very good right now offensively, it's going to be a very difficult situation where we could struggle to score goals here. So for me, Arsenal must not concede first. That is the number one thing. And then I think if we don't concede first, I think that we can build upon that. But the number one thing is we don't concede first. And I'm sure the players and the managers know that, because offensively, we have been very poor. And right now, Arsenal are in survival. We just have to get through the next few games without Martin Odegaard. We just have to wait. We just have to be there at least close to Manchester City until Mikel Merino or Martin Odegaard comes. That is the number one, what would you call it, number one aim right now. The Arsenal we're just in survival mode right now without Martin Odegaard. It is so bad to watch us right now. Honestly, when I watched us against Atlanta, it was so horrible. Like, I was almost gonna fall asleep. It was that bad. And another thing we must avoid doing in this big game is giving away any loose balls, any sloppy chances, because Atlanta, we gave away a penalty. We got very lucky. David Villa saved us. Aston Villa, we did something very stupid. We, what was his name? Gabriel lost the ball. Even against Tottenham, Saliba, Thomas Partey, Ben White lost the ball as well. And Solanke almost, thankfully, Solanke didn't shoot. But these are the chances that I'm talking about that Arsenal could not give away to Manchester City, especially when you look at who is on top for them. Haaland. You give Haaland a half a chance, this guy will score. And another thing that Arsenal have to do is defensively and in terms of possession is not lose the ball in very dangerous situations, especially when we're not being pressured. Not lose the ball in dangerous situations, because Manchester City could easily turn it over. Boom, one goal. Haaland is in the form of his life right now. and you only need to give Haaland a split chance and he will punish you. So that's another important thing that Arsenal need to avoid. But the one thing I will continue saying is Arsenal cannot concede first. At the same time, Arsenal do have some threats going forward. In terms of the front three, it's going to be interesting to see what Arteta does. For me, Saka, in my front three would be Saka, Kai Havertz, and I'd bring on Sterling. I would drop Martinelli for this game. But at the same time, if Martinelli does start this game, I wouldn't be opposed to it. I just feel like he does have that pacing behind. But for me, I think I'll play Sterling. And also, we have to be clinical. We're not going to get much chances against Manchester City. So the half chances that we do get against Manchester City, we do need to take them. Now, if you remember last season when we played against Manchester City last season at the Etihad, I would say even though it was a 0-0 boring draw and Manchester City had all the possession, for me, I would argue we had the better chances. It was just unfortunate we couldn't take them. But this time, when I know we're not going to create much chances, when we do get those half chances, which we will definitely get at least 1 or 2 chances. We need to take it. Like, we cannot let these chances go by, because if we do, Manchester City only need 1 chance and it's going to be a goal with Haaland. But the centre backs, for the first time in years, under Wenger, like, we've had clowns at defense, but for the first time, we got Gabriel, Saliba, we got Timber, we got Calafiori, we got Benwa, we got defenders who are actually serious, who are not clowns. Okay, that's the one thing that gives me confidence. In terms of the lineup, this is make or break for Arsenal. This lineup, for me, I would go with David Villa. I would get Ben White in. I would take Ben White off. So I would put Timber there and I'll put Calafiori on the other side, and I would go Gabriel, Saliba. Midfield is the important one. Now, there's 3 ways you could go. You could go for a whole defensive midfield where you could get Declan Rice, Jorginho, Thomas Partey, or you could take a bit of a risk where you bring on Ethan Nwauri. That is the most difficult situation. Who do we take off and who do we bring? For me, I personally think Arteta will go with Declan Rice, Thomas Partey, and Jorginho. For me, I wouldn't mind it, but Thomas Partey and Jorginho. Jorginho, actually, he played okay when he came on against Atlanta, but Thomas Partey, who used to be one of my favorite players, but this guy's legs are completely gone. And not just his legs are completely gone, it seems his brains, as well as with his legs, have also gone, because Thomas Partey was one of the most press-resistant players for Arsenal. Anytime he had the ball, anytime he was getting pressed, he could drop his shoulder and just pass it out or give it to Saka. Now, for some flipping reason, it feels like every time there's a man on behind him, he just doesn't know there's a player behind him, or he's giving away sloppy balls. He would intercept the ball, he would win the ball back, but within 2 minutes make another wrong or stupid decision and lose the ball. So for me, Thomas Partey has to be on his A game, like no silly fouls, not getting skinned like he did against Atlanta. Jorginho needs to be on it as well. For me, those 2 players need to be. Declan Rice, I already know he's going to be on it, but Thomas Partey and Jorginho, which I feel like they will play, need to be on it. Havertz, get rid of Havertz in midfield. That experiment needs to be over and done with. We found his best position, which is forward. He needs to play as a forward. Saka, we don't even need to say anything about Saka. Left wing, who do we go? Do we go with Trossard? Do we go with Sterling? Or do we go with Martinelli? For me, bring on Sterling. I think Sterling deserves a chance. I think Martinelli has been given enough chances, and unfortunately, he's just not picking up for me. Even against Atlanta, he had that 1 chance he really should have scored. So for me, bring on Sterling. Coming up against his old team, he has a point to prove. And against Chelsea, with Chelsea last season, he was a menace against Manchester City. He scored. I think he scored both home and I'm sure he's scored at the Etihad, but at home against in Stamford Bridge against Man City, he was a complete menace, giving Kyle Walker an absolute runaround. So for me, I would go with Sterling. In terms of my predictions, I think this game is going to be a draw, and I'm happy I would take a draw right now, because if we lose this game, it's going to be 5 points behind Manchester City, and you're already 5 games in, and being 5 points against Manchester City against a normal team, that's fine, but when you're going up against Manchester City, that feels like you're a mile away, because you're hoping for Manchester City to drop points, and the way they're playing right now, I don't see who can make them drop points right now. So for me, we just must not lose this game. We need to keep that gap minimum, and then after New Year's, where we get our players back, we can pop a push, and then that's when I'm sure when we come up against Manchester City again at home, that's when we can beat them. But the number one thing is just don't lose, don't extend that gap, because once it's extended to 5 points, now you're catching up, now you're playing catch up, and Manchester City, they never lose. when they're leading. We saw that last season. We were hoping they drop points, but they never did. So yeah, that's just my thoughts. Of course, I want to know what your guys' thoughts are. Let me know in the comments. Make sure you subscribe. Let me know what your lineup is. And yeah, like the video, and I'll catch you guys next time.